In this pod, we're going to look at what economies of scale are and how businesses achieve them.
Have you ever heard that when you buy in bulk, you can get it cheaper? What this means is that the more items you buy, the better discount you can negotiate, so the cost per item decreases. This is an example of economies of scale. It's not a definition, but just one example. A better definition of economies of scale is where businesses' unit cost decreases as its output increases. Remember, unit cost means the cost for each individual product, and output is the number sold.
Economies of scale can occur for internal and external reasons. Internal means they happen because of decisions within the business, and external means it's something that happens outside the business. The example at the beginning of this pod of bulk buying is an external example because it's outside of the business. It's what's known as purchasing economies of scale.
There are various internal economies of scale. The first is financial, which means it's easier and cheaper to raise finance. There's also technical, which is down to efficiency of production. Finally, you have marketing, which means your promotion gets cheaper as you produce more.
For example, if I was making a cake, I'd need to buy a range of equipment like a mixer and an oven. To get this money, I might need a loan. As an individual with no credit history, the bank may not trust me, so may not give me a loan or may charge higher interest to cover themselves in case I don't pay it back. But if I'm a large business with a good history, any bank will be happy to lend to me, which means I can shop around and negotiate cheaper interest so it's cheaper to borrow money. This is financial economies of scale.
Then when I'm making the cake, I pay someone £10 per hour to make one cake. They weigh ingredients, mix them, bake them, and so on. But then, if my output increases and I make 2 cakes, it doesn't take much longer to weigh 2 sets of ingredients instead of 1, and both can be put in the oven at the same time. So overall, it takes my employee, on average, 1 hour to make 1 cake or 1.5 hours to make 2 cakes. This means they've become more efficient. So on average, it's gone from taking 60 minutes to make 1 cake to 45 minutes, because it's 1.5 hours for 2 cakes. This is technical economies of scale.
When I go to sell my cakes, I put an advert up in the local paper and it costs £50. If I'm selling 1 cake, it costs me £50 to advertise that 1 cake. But if I'm selling 2, I don't need 2 of the same advert. I still just use 1. This means the cost of advertising has now gone from £50 for 1 cake to £50 for 2, so £25 per cake. If I sold 5 cakes, it would now be £10 per cake, and so on.
As you can see, the idea is pretty straightforward. The more I produce, the cheaper it is per product, and so it allows me to be more competitive. But you can also gain diseconomies of scale, which means the cost rises as output increases. This could be for many reasons. For example, the business is too hard to manage, communications get confused, or staff get demotivated as the business grows.
To give one example for our cakes, what if I need to expand my customer base and I sell into a neighbouring town? I now need to advertise in 2 separate newspapers. Imagine I go from selling 5 cakes in one town to 6 cakes in 2 towns. With 5 cakes, my promotional cost was £10 per cake. When it's 6 cakes with 2 adverts, it's still £50 per advert, so £100 total. When this is averaged across 6 cakes, my marketing cost has gone from £10 per cake to £17.
So how do you know if you're gaining economies of scale? You calculate average unit cost. This is done by taking the total cost and dividing by the number sold. So, just as before, the cost of the adverts is £100, and we sold 6 cakes. So the unit cost is 100 divided by 6, which is £17. If unit costs rise, this is diseconomies of scale, and if they fall, it's economies of scale.